Welcome, everybody. We are happy to have you at this webinar for our new major release, how you can do more with your data and save time and money doing it as well. While we are waiting for people to join, I know it's happened to me before where I get a reminder last minute and I'm trying to download the app and trying to get dial into the session. So while that's occurring, we'll give everybody about a minute. Let me cover a few things for you. Number one, thank you for being a customer. We're excited to have you. A couple of things here also. First of all, where's everybody from? I'd love to see where everybody's from. Please go ahead and send chats to me, and would love to see that, and hopefully we can share that towards the end. Mozenda has been in development for over 10 years. Mozenda has also built the most powerful web scraping tool in the market. We also have world-class in-house customer support. So just outside this door, we have an incredible staff, and they'll answer your phone calls and answer your emails. We're happy to do so. This is why 27% of the Fortune 500 companies trust, and thousands of small and medium businesses trust Mozenda, because we truly care about providing you with world-class service. It's important to note that our tool is very easy to use. For most websites and cases, you don't need to be a developer to use our tool. There are some websites that are a little harder to scrape, and that's why we're available for you to call us, and we can even do a screen share and go through the process with you to make sure that you get the data that you're looking for. Let's go ahead and jump in. I think it's been about long enough to have everybody download the app and join us. So this is the team that's going to be on the call today. Chris Curtis is a development team lead. And by the way, collectively, all of these engineers have a collective experience of over 20 years of combined experience in our tool set at Mozenda. So they are extremely passionate about what they do, and they know the code and all the features inside and out. So I've introduced Chris Curtis as a development team lead. Joe Fulmer is senior software engineer. Nathan Barton is quality assurance engineer. And I'm Mike Alvarez. I'm the director of marketing and customer success. So let's go through the agenda now. We're first going to cover the why, and I'll go ahead and cover that myself. Secondly, just for a couple of minutes, we're going to cover the basics. Only a couple of minutes because there's a few of you who are new to Mozenda, but most of our attendees here today are power users. The item history demo, that's what we're going to cover next. Then best practices, and then the last one is going to be a question and answer session. So let's jump into this. So the big why. We have a core belief at Mozenda that if we can make things faster, more efficient, and help you collect greater amounts of data that helps you make better business decisions, you will keep coming back for more. So this is what we've done. Engineers got together to try to figure out what would be the next release, and they decided that we're going to add these features that are going to add greater flexibility, speed, and savings to you. These are, number one, we're going to allow you to store larger amounts of historical data, and secondly, to view more item history without having to rerun agents, thus saving you time and money and processing credits. So I don't know about you, but I think everybody should be excited about that. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Nathan, and he's going to cover the basics and the quick demonstration. And then Joe is going to cover best practices, and Chris will chime in whenever available. Go ahead, Nathan.
Great, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. So we're really excited about this particular feature. Like Mike said, I'm going to cover briefly just some basic background, and then roll right into a little show and tell demo. So really, in order for us to be able to allow you to store larger amounts of item history and change your configuration without rerunning your agent, we really need to understand why you would apply different filters to your data to be able to take advantage of this unique fields release here. So we'll start with a quick business case here to hopefully help you kind of grasp the concepts that we're about to talk about and kind of follow along. So if I were working for a display manufacturer, for example, and I were to be approached by my boss and asked if I could prepare a data set that essentially looks for relationship between TV sets sold via retail and their particular availability, whether they're available online or in stores only, for just as an example of our particular business case. And so my thought is, okay, that's great. I can do that. I can use Mozenda to gather that particular data set from the web, be able to look for particular relationships here. So let's go over to the web console and see the data set that I've gathered here. So here I have a list of data that I scraped from the web of retail TV sets, and you can see that I have quite a few rows here, a few rows of products that are actually the same. There's quite a few rows of that Samsung 64-inch 4K HD TV, for example. But remember, I'm specifically looking for products in relation to their availability. And so I essentially want to collapse that down and only be able to only see those particular items. So in order to do this, I'm going to take advantage of the unique fields filter. So we're going to go ahead and apply that now by going to the fields view here. And I'm going to just start off right out of the gate with selecting product ID as a unique field, setting that, and allowing Mozenda to apply that filter based on the configuration we have set here. So that's currently applying that unique field, cleaning that data. And here you see I've got each of those products collapsed down into the unique identifier of product ID. That Samsung 64-inch, for example, we're now only seeing one instance of that particular row. So here, that's just kind of the basics. We're gonna jump into this concept of how we in Mozenda allow you to apply the unique fields filter, as well as a few other filters that we're going to go over today. So let's jump back to, we've got a brief graphic here. We'll go to the next one here. So we just touched briefly on the unique fields filter. Essentially, this graphic here is helping us describe the flow of data as it exists in Mozenda. There are several filters. We covered the first. We also, well, actually, let me talk a little bit more about unique fields. If we go back to my particular business case, I actually want to see products by availability. And this, to start things off, we only applied a unique field to product ID. If you've used unique fields in the past, one of the things that you'll remember is if I've applied a unique field and need to change that configuration to include another field as part of that unique set, then I would have to essentially rerun the agent to gather the data again. One of the changes that we've made with this update is that once you've scraped the data with a particular field, you can change that unique field's configuration without having to rerun your data. So let's go ahead and apply both product ID and availability as our unique fields. So go back to the data set here. And you'll see, back to that Samsung 64-inch, there's actually one that's available both in-store and one that's available online. So we have now collapsed down to that combination of unique fields. And you can identify that with the key icon in those field headers. So that is one of the first filters that you can apply to a data set after it's been scraped, to that raw harvesting results. One of the other filters that you can apply after that is what we call just what do you want to include, essentially. And there's a couple of different ways that you can apply that filter. If for example, you want your agent to aggregate data over a period of time or over all of your individual bookmarks, you could select a filter called All Items Ever Found. This will essentially let you view all of the unique fields, all of the unique items across all bookmarks, essentially making that agent configured to aggregate data. You could also set it to most recently completed run, which is essentially the most recent complete bookmark for that particular agent, and which one, the one that has completed its bookends. And let's go ahead and apply. In this particular case, this agent is currently set to for all items ever found, to include that in its what to include filter. If I were to change that to most recent completed run, you will see here that the unique fields filter has been applied. You will see those collapse down. You will also see the item status column. In this case, all 6 of these items have actually have not been changed since the previous bookmark. It's important to keep in mind that the item status shown in this particular view is in relation to the previous bookmark, to the most recent completed run. So this is an example of another filter that you can apply to your raw harvesting results to be able to consume the data. Now, this what to include filter plays a role into the type of data that is sent to your combined collections if this agent sources a combined collection. It also plays a role into what data is sourced by a data item list, or what is published and exported. In this particular case, this agent is defaulted to all items ever found. I can know that because when I'm selecting the most recently completed run, I see the save icon to the right of the drop down here. If I were to set this agent to default to the most recent completed run, I would simply select this icon, save this, review the data in this, the information in this dialog, say OK, and now this agent is set to default to most recent completed run. But don't worry, you can always go back to view the all items ever found. And let's go ahead and do that now and resave that configuration. We want this agent to aggregate data. So we're doing this to show you that, again, the same concept I was talking about before, where if you need to change the configuration for this particular agent, you could do so without needing to rerun the agent. And the way that we can do this is if your harvesting settings are set to store item history. Let's crack open the harvesting results, or the harvesting settings, excuse me, for this particular agent. In the behavior tab of the harvesting settings, you may remember that we used to have track item history as a setting and delete old items on successful completion. We've consolidated both of those settings into one setting here, the store item history. With this setting enabled, we will store all the data that you have scraped for this particular agent, so that if you need to change your configuration in future with a combination of unique fields and the what to include filter, you can do so without having to rerun the agent. So we definitely want this agent to store item history. Now, I talked about the what to include filter had an effect on both publishing and exporting. We made a few changes to those settings that we want to go through. The publishing dialog, if we open that up, and if I wanted to set a publisher to email me with the data, I could also include the all items ever found or the most recently completed run what to include file. Now, this will default to whichever of those settings I have set the agent to persist, but don't worry, you can choose either of those options for publishing. So let's select most recently completed run, save that publishing configuration. And once it's been saved, that configuration will store as a setting for your publisher. So let's take a look at the same thing in the export dialog. You can see that there's the what to include in the file filter here. I have the same options, as well as the option to export harvesting results. And that is one filter that we haven't talked about yet. It's a little bit different than the first two. So let's go back to the data view and change our view to harvesting results. So it takes a little bit of time for these filters to be applied. The system, once you've chosen your configuration, will need to process through those and apply the unique fields and what to include filters. But we know that you want to see your data as the agent's running. So we've included this option for you to be able to, as your agent is running real time, be able to refresh this view, go to the harvesting results, and see the raw data coming in as it's being scraped. Now, a couple of things that we'd like to make note here. The harvesting results, this is raw data. The unique fields filter and the what to include filter are not applied here in this particular case. You can see that we have our duplicates, our duplicate items in our list. As the agent runs, it will gather this raw data, and eventually will finish scraping and will refresh the data. You may have seen this in the status of your agents up at the top of the dashboard. And that refreshing data, what that will do is that will take the raw harvesting results that you can see in this particular view, clean it, add those filters, and move that to the most recently completed run, as well as update the all items ever found. So that at that point, once the refreshing data status is completed, you will be able to see those raw results in those particular reports. So we've talked a little bit about those filters. Let's finish the life cycle of data here for Mozenda. One that you may be familiar with that we've had is the item status filters. But we wanted to touch on this here real quick. We've noticed the item status in the most recently completed run. You may not see that anymore in the all items ever found, because that's an aggregation of data. But we've also still allow you to have the ability to change those filters, to be able to see which items have been added, changed, unchanged, or even deleted when you're storing this item history. We also still have the ability to iterate through different bookmarks to see those the data for that particular snapshot, for that particular point in time. So we've broken that out into its own view. Let's go to the history view. Here we can select a bookmark from this drop-down to view. So let's review the most recent one. Let's select our, let's see, we have currently 6 items that have been unchanged. Let's select the deleted filter, make sure we include that in here. Because I believe, yep, we also have one item that was removed essentially from the website that was not scraped on this most recent completed, this most recent bookmark. Let's go down to the previous bookmark and see what those item statuses are. Here we can see a few have changed, with the majority being unchanged. It's important to keep in mind that the item status is in relation to the previous bookmark. We can change this filter, and again, this is just another filter that we allow you to apply to be able to view and consume your data. One last filter we would like to talk about in the life cycle of Mozenda is our simple views. You may be familiar with custom views that you can create to apply criteria, sorting to, and this will apply on top of all of the previous filters that we've talked about. So let's really briefly just finish off by creating a custom view. So in this particular view, in the data tab, let's create a view that includes only items that we can purchase in bulk, so that have a quantity of greater than 1. So I'm going to here name this view, select my column headings that I want to include, set a criteria. In this case, on the quantity field, I'm going to want to set a criteria to be greater than, let's say, not equals 1. Let's save that particular view. And you'll notice here that has filtered the data down even further to this single item. So that essentially is all of the filters that we allow you to configure for your agent, so that once you have the raw harvesting results and store item history, you can then pick and choose your particular configuration, change that as you need so that you can consume it. So that's kind of all we had for that demo. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, this is fantastic. As you were going through the demo, I couldn't help but think, for those of you who are used to using Macs, that the bookmarks feature, similar to what Mac uses for Time Machine, to go back in time and to be able to access previous data. That's a great feature. Joe, would you mind covering what you believe are some of the best practices to set this up, and also other things that our clients may want to consider while using this?
So certainly, yeah, I'd like to I'd talk to that. As a developer, one of the most exciting things of this for me was to add this ability to change your uniques and then not have to go rerun your agents. As we saw, previously we had the unique, or Nathan in his demo had the unique on product ID, and so all of the products with all of the items with that same product ID all collapsed down to a single one. But then we realized, wait, we want to have that same product ID distinguished by whether it's available or not. And so we were able to go apply that additional unique field, and after it, the system does its recalculating, which depending on how many millions of rows you've got, may take a little bit of time, but it certainly is going to be a lot less time than having to go rescrape all that data, because the system previously would have already collapsed and burned in that deduping process, whereas now, once you've chosen your configuration, yes, we burn it in, but we are able to go back to those originally scraped items and change our configuration and burn it in with different uniques. So you save not only processing credits and not having to rescrape, but you also save time. And the other benefit it would be is, let's say that the product is no longer available on the website. So when you go to rescrape, rerun your agents, it doesn't even pick it up. I think that's the biggest #1 feature here, is just the ability to have all of that history at beck and call. You can change your uniques and look at your data in different ways, different combinations of uniques, and learn different things from that. Another feature, it's not really the main focus of this webinar, but the storage of images has been improved. So if you've got an agent that scrapes images, say, or downloads files, and say that 100 of the item was scraped, and it scraped that same image, or let's say the Sony TV that we're looking at here, it scraped it from several different categories. Well, previously we would have saved that image as many times as we scraped the item, whereas now we will save that item just once and save on some storage costs. So I think those are, that's I guess the big exciting benefits for me is that keeping the history and being able to change your uniques on the fly, being able to look at your different views, whether aggregated or the most recently completed run, or whether you want to see everything unfiltered, as it's coming in.
So Joe, I guess bottom line is duplicates that we used to discard before, now we realize that they are just an absolute goldmine of information, right?
Yes, yes. And what we learned was that customers would often look at their data and then realize, oh, you know what, I actually need it to be more granular with my duplicates. I do want to see this same Sony TV more than once if it's in different categories, for example, or if they have a different price. Or so customers don't want to have to go rerun, we don't have to go rerun the agent to get that. So yeah, that's great. I guess you also asked if I would speak to best practices. One of the things that I think is really important is when you design your agent and first set it up, that you anticipate you may use data or information, pieces of information, fields of information down the road that may not right now seem that important. So Nate set this up and he scraped available. We didn't initially have that in our unique field and maybe didn't anticipate that, but he saw that that was an available piece of information to scrape, so he grabbed it. If he hadn't done that, and then we realized later, boss comes and says, hey, yeah, I need these by whether they're available or not, you would have to go run your data. Obviously, we can't work miracles and and have data that wasn't scraped to begin with. And so I guess that is one of my key points is, grab all the data you can as you scrape each item, as you set up your agent to capture these items. If there's a piece of information that's easy to grab it.
That's an excellent point, because a lot of times some of the information on that page is missed because it's not asked of us as we're trying to collect this data. But if we can, we might as well grab more data, and then even if we were to go back in time and plot all this out and trend it over time, you would be able to see some incredible information to be able to make business decisions on. That's great, Joe. Thank you so much for that. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and just show. All right.
I'll let you take control.
Let's take over on this end. There we go. So just in quick summary, what you see in red is basically what's new. Is after unique fields, we allow you to do more custom filtering and to be able to sort the information in a consumable way. And this I believe this also provides a visual that is really easy to understand of what happened before and what happens now. So before, you would be able to actually scrape all this data and sort it into, let's say, for example, a category of smart TVs. But now you can, as you're scraping data and you're not deleting the duplicates, if you take a look at the new step 2, you're able to now see the data based off of category, smart TVs, 4K TVs, or 52 inches. Previously, you would have had to run maybe 3 agents to get that information, rather than just once, with how we have it set up today with the new feature set. So let's go ahead and jump into questions and answers, and then we'll wrap this up. We do have a good question here. What if I set the product ID as a unique field, but using this data? Can my agent still run and scrape other data?
That's an excellent question. I could talk about that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to talk about briefly is about setting up your agent. It's important to make sure that if you would like to apply all of these filters, that you have the data available in your raw harvesting results to apply those filters. Now, what that means is you may be only required to scrape certain amounts of data, but you might need to be forward thinking about what fields you may want to include later down the road in case you need to change that configuration. In this, back to our business case, if we had never scraped quantity, for example, if that wasn't one of our fields, then we would not be able to apply those filters after the fact. So even if we don't need that right away, it might be beneficial for us to be able to set up the agent to include that filter. So step one really is to understand which fields are needed, which fields might be needed in the future, and which fields maybe you still want to include even though it might be extra data that you don't need right now. So that's step one. Step two is, in the case of the unique fields, if you would like to apply that unique fields filter, that happens after the scraping of the raw data. So in this particular case, if the product ID were to not exist on the web page, then that unique fields filter will be applied at the end, identifying that particular line item as null or empty, if you will. And so the agent will still scrape the data as you have set the configuration, as you've created that agent definition, but that unique fields filter will apply afterwards on top of that raw result. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks, Mike.
Great. There's another quick question here. Approximately, what is the amount of time that it takes for an agent's data to refresh?
That's an excellent question. So a lot of that really depends on the size of the raw harvesting results. How many rows of data, how many columns exist in that particular collection. And because it varies so much, I don't know if I could give an exact time, because each collection is going. But like I've mentioned before, this is one of the main focuses of this development process, has been to allow you to be able to see your raw harvesting results as it's being scraped prior to, so that you can make sure your agent is gathering the data that you want. And there may be a period of time of collection maintenance if it's a large collection, for example. There may be that refreshing data may take some time if it's a large collection, or it may be fairly brief. So I'm sorry I can't apply an exact time, but it really does depend, and we recommend knowing your collection, knowing your agent, and the time associated with each of those particular actions.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for being on the phone call. Thank you for being a customer of Mozenda's. We are excited to hear your feedback on everything having to do with this release. If you find any gold nuggets of data, we would love to hear it. We'd love to hear your testimonials as well. Again, my name is Mike Alvarez, and feel free to ask any of the support people how to get a hold of me if you'd like to share a testimonial as well. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.